On the issue of the unique roles of mothers, you've said quite a bit about fathering as well. You've said the research shows that fathers are not interchangeable with mothers, but they also serve a critical function with babies in the first 5 years, which is, I hate to say it in Australia, I'm patron of the Australian Fathering Project. That's news to a lot of fathers. They think their job is just to support. It's extraordinary how few fathers actually, it goes back to a point we made earlier. People know surprisingly little about their children's needs. And to be blunt about it, in this country, the research is quite clear. Most fathers don't think they have a great role to play, particularly in the early years, and they start to engage when the kids play and interact. But you say they serve a critical function with babies in the first 5 years. Can you elaborate on that? What is it that they contribute? What's the vital role? Is it
Yeah,
different and equally important, or different and not as important? How do you see it?
it's different and equally important. And I should give you a caveat here and say that there are many fathers who are serving as primary caregivers to their children. Their wives go out and are the main money earners, and they are staying home with their children. And with those fathers, there is a lot that you can teach a father in terms of how to be a more sensitive, empathic nurturer like a mother. But first, we have to admit that there's a difference. We have a problem in society, and that we don't. This sort of gender neutrality, I call it, says that there's no difference between men and women. And we know from biology that men and women respond to nurturing hormones differently. So we know that when mothers produce oxytocin, it affects their behavior in this way. It makes them what we call more sensitive, empathic nurturers. They respond to baby's distress very vigilantly, and are very sort of tuned in to the distressed emotions to get them back to that state of homeostasis. That's a healthy mother. There are lots of unhealthy mothers. When a healthy father produces oxytocin, and he can produce oxytocin, it tends to come from a different part of the brain, and it has a different impact on a father's behavior, and that's a biological thing. A father who's loaded with oxytocin is more playfully stimulating with his baby. He engages his baby through play and physical play and almost distraction from distress. And that is a biological response to oxytocin. So it's not that fathers can't produce oxytocin, but they have a different behavioral response. There was an experiment done with intranasal oxytocin, because they're doing all these research, experiments on intranasal oxytocin to help with autism, to help fathers to be more nurturing. What they found is when fathers were given intranasal oxytocin and then they were with their babies, they were more engaged with their babies, but they were like hyper playfully stimulating. So they threw the baby up in the air more, they tickled the baby harder. Fathers are critical to help children to separate from mothers. So, and the reason I'm saying that is their behavior, their nurturing behavior is to promote resilience. But you can't promote resilience before you've laid down the foundation of emotional security, which comes from sensitive, empathic nurturing. So fathers play this critical role. So what we see in America is a lot of mothers by choice, single mothers by choice. Women who are having babies by themselves and going to sperm banks and whatever. And what we're seeing is that these babies can really attach to their mothers, but then they can't separate from their mothers. There isn't that counterforce of a father's nurturing, which is playful and, come away from your mother and it's great out here. We'll roll around in the grass and play ball. And so this kind of help with separation is a critical role of fathers. The other thing that fathers do is mothers regulate distress and fear, sadness. These are the emotions that oxytocin helps mothers they help mothers to regulate. When I say regulate, mothers are very good at helping to regulate stress and sadness. Fathers regulate aggression. So when we see in research, I have a colleague, Alan Shore, he's very famous for his research on the importance of fathers. And he talks about how when fathers are not present for children at a young age, those little boys become more aggressive because they have no one helping to regulate their aggression, because mothers don't regulate aggression as well as fathers regulate aggression. So they really serve different functions, right? Doesn't mean that in a gender neutral society, we can't teach fathers to be more like mothers and mothers to be more like fathers. But before we can teach something, you have to admit that you need to be taught. You have to admit the difference. And I think the frustration as a therapist is the defensiveness, not the openness to say, gosh, organically, biologically, I am different, but I can learn this.
Fascinating. I must say, when our kids were growing up, I noticed very clearly that all four children, boys and girls, looked to mum for warmth and nurture, particularly if they'd stubbed their toe. They'd squeal with delight when they thought dad might provide some stimulation and play and fun. And I also understand that from the research done by people like Warren Farrell and John Gray in the book The Boy Crisis, that the dad's role is very important in teaching a child how to delay their gratification, which is critical to making good long-term choices later in life. Like, I will make sacrifices now to spend time with my child so that child grows up to be secure in the longer term.
A father is of equal value as a mother, but they perform different functions for children. And I will say that is not socialization, that is biological. That is our biological response to our hormones.